my fellow Americans.
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
Who are shouting? Just a moment.
I'm not defending him in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planting information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually, the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding disinformation? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect, it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi or agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
And it might sound radical, colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organisation should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
We become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done, and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even
extremely-
agree what disinformation is. You
well-
can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
You would know this this is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie and I work very hard on it every morning over a cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email, and all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
You killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was
already
still in
done.
Parliament,
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the major's. The major's assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone, or to take the nation to war partway, or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip, because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, They get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a sec." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." I said, "We're going to war with Iraq? Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, "I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show, but if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Well, one of the 4 principal functions of the CIA is to gather intelligence and ideally forward it to the president, the users of information, the policymakers, as they say. There are other functions, however, some of them more legitimate than others. One is to run secret wars, the covert action that's written and talked about so much, like what's happening in Nicaragua today from Honduras. Another thing is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA. And unfortunately, of course, it overlaps into the gathering of information. You have contact with a journalist, you will give him true stories, you'll get information from him, you'll also give him false stories. For example, in my war, the Angola war that I helped to manage, 1/3 of my staff was propaganda. Ironically, it's called covert action inside the CIA. Outside, that means the violent part. I had propagandists all over the world, principally in London, Kinshasa, and Zambia. We would take stories which we would write and put them in the Zambia Times, and then pull them out and send them to a journalist on our payroll in Europe. But his cover story, you see, would be that he'd gotten them from his stringer in Lusaka, who had gotten them from the Zambia Times. We had the complicity of the government of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, if you will, to put these false stories into his newspapers. But after that point, the journalists, Reuters and AFP, the management was not witting of it. Now, our contact man in Europe was, and we pumped just dozens of stories about Cuban atrocities, Cuban rapists. In one case, we had the Cuban rapists caught and tried by the Ovimbundu maidens who had been their victims, and then we ran photographs that made almost every newspaper in the country of the Cubans being executed by the Ovimbunda women who supposedly had been their victims.
These were fake photos?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't know of one single atrocity committed by the Cubans. It was pure, raw, false propaganda to create an illusion of communists, eating babies for breakfast and that sort of totally false propaganda.
The only reason that I'm allowed to ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the Press Gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is, organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Let's go, everybody. Welcome into Redacted on this Thursday. Good to see all of you. I'm Clayton.
That let's go. Is like,
Oh, I see people in the chat saying, let's go.
Okay.
It's 4 p.m. Eastern
That was
time.
a little
Let's
squeaky.
go. Let's
Okay.
go.
let's do it.
Let's go it, guys.
All
Welcome in.
right. Let's take a look at some things. I'm Natalie Morris. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see all of you guys. We've got a very busy show for you on this Thursday, if you can believe it, because there's a lot of news. In fact, the Biden administration just moments ago, right before we came on the air, made a big announcement about Ukraine. Huge announcement, which we will get to in mere moments. Also, the FBI now forced to admit, thanks to some revealing documents, that they've been targeting Catholics and labeling them as potential terrorists. Yes, Catholics are terrorists in the eyes of the FBI. We will cover that story for you tonight.
Plus, Best Buy is promoting people, but not if they're white. So in the vein of many liberal solutions, it's fight discrimination with discrimination. We're going to take a look at that story.
Also, we're going to look at Trudeau and the government of Trudeau. Once again, now with a $100 million war chest. They are deploying a $100 million war chest under the auspices of, promoting pride all through Canada and elevating the LGBTQ plus movement there. But turns out millions of those dollars are going to target parents who are fed up with the indoctrination of gender ideology in their schools. We are going to dive deep into the Trudeau government tonight and much more as Redacted starts right now.
All right, thank you for joining us. It's Thursday. We're so glad you're here. Today we have a lot to get to. Yes, that's better.
That's better?
Thank
Okay,
you.
I had to adjust the audio.
I couldn't hear the show in my earpiece, so I'm looking at him like an old lady, like, what?
I wonder if our kids come into the studio and play,
And just mess with us. Yeah.
touch the dials. I need to put up a sign: do not touch the dials in the studio, in the Redacted studio.
Right.
Keep your
You
hands
don't mess
off.
with perfection. All right. Thank you again for joining us. This is the show where we cover the topics that the mainstream media largely ignores or spins to you in a way that's convenient for them and inconvenient for the rest of us as truth seekers. We are lifelong learners. We are avid readers. We are, we're here for you. We are here to serve.
Charles Redding sent a nice email earlier today, and I just wanted to, you got it there, Philip. Way to go. Charles sent in this message earlier today, and I love this email. He said, I used to be stuck on Fox News, on Fox Business, and a couple of others until I saw your newsletter. And let me just say, I only now watch for your newsletter in the morning, and I'm full of firepower to contradict what others say, things like the fake media has to say. They don't like that. Keep doing what you're doing. You have a forever follower as far as I'm concerned. Thank you, Charles. I love getting emails like this, and I try to respond to as many of you as I possibly can. But thank you, Charles. I just wanted to call that out. I thought that was great, because I think we're seeing a lot of that now with people who, after they got rid of Tucker Carlson, people really becoming more and more aware of the corporate media, not just MSNBC and CNN, but Fox and all of the corporate media.
Right. It just doesn't seem like there's right or left. There's just both sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
We saw that with the pandemic. We see that with the way that certain things are covered. We don't come here with an agenda. We don't come here to debunk anything or to prove anybody wrong. We're just trying to look at things with as open eye as possible. And a lot of times, turns out the stories we cover, we don't like the way they go. It's not for us to like it or not. It's just for us to learn.
So Charles was talking about the newsletter, and hey, we have a daily newsletter. We'd love for you to sign up for it. It's totally free, and you'll receive it at like around 7 a.m. Eastern time if you're in the United States. That's usually when we try to publish it. So all you need to do is go to redacted.inc. Redacted.inc is the place to go, and all you do is you click on the left side of your screen there. And sign up for our free newsletter. Just put in your name and hit submit, and you'll receive a welcome email. And then you have to confirm it, because otherwise it might go to your spam folder or your your promotions folder or some other folder, you know. And then the next morning you'll receive the newsletter bright and early at about 7 a.m. Eastern time. So again, redacted.inc is the place to go in order to sign up for that. So hopefully everything. You guys can hear us okay, right?
Yeah. There was I was actually trying to cycle through my B-roll real quick, and then I realized B-roll is up. And then immediately after that, that's why I was checking on something. I was like, wait a minute, what am I looking at? And then David, for some reason, started feeding back. So that was what that whole.
Okay.
It was
I just wondering.
a comedy of errors.
I hate when we're like starting the show. We're like 2 minutes into it. We're really into a flow, and then I glance over at the chat room, and like the whole chat room says, "No audio. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. We can't hear you." We're like, son of a bitch. Let's re-rack that and do that again. Anyway, all right. So we're all good to go. All right, let's get into the news now and a big update. Just before we came on the air tonight, the Biden administration has requested another $24 billion for Ukraine. Makes sense. Throw more money into the fire of corruption. $24 billion. I mean, this is on top of the already approved military budget and the already approved congressional budget for Ukraine, on top of all of the money that's going there that we don't even know about.
Right. I mean, given that the U.S. credit rating has been downgraded by just one analyst firm, but still that, Moody's. That was, it's big, right? Because just like the rest of us, when you apply for a loan, you realize the income is too low and the debts are too high.
Right.
Does this seem like a good time to then go do something like that?
No, and the reason that Moody's downgraded specifically was debt. The national debt of the United States, the unsustainable national debt of the United States. But just forget the debt for a second. Just drive around any American street right now and go into any American major city, and it looks like zombie town. Strung out, drug addicts laying on the side of the street. It doesn't matter if you're in Oakland. It doesn't matter if you're in Philadelphia, San Francisco. Drive through the streets of New Jersey. It doesn't matter. It's all over the United States right now. And we can send $24 billion to Ukraine. And these politicians who are running for president, like Marianne Williamson, Jimmy Dore had her on last night. And like she's like, no, it doesn't matter. Like the support for Ukraine has nothing to do with the drug addicted streets of the United States and the lack and the amount of homelessness on America's streets. Like they can totally compartmentalize this stuff. It's unbelievable how they can keep these things separated.
Right.
Well, what I want to see then is put your money where your mouth is. If it doesn't matter, then spend that money on U.S. cities as well.
Right, exactly.
And then let's see what happens.
Because we know, we've reported this, the idea of homelessness and homelessness and poverty in the United States could be eliminated with like what, $20 billion? I think the number is like 21 billion could eradicate poverty in the United States?
Well, that's very hypothetical because, as Michael Schellenberger points out in his book, San Francisco, is that there is a homeless industrial complex. And so a lot of times when a city does throw money at this problem, they'll put it in disparate places. So it's not, in fact, that the police will enforce certain things like pooping on the street or repeat drug offenses or parole violations. And it's not just that there's homeless shelters, and it's not just that there are drug rehabilitation centers. Those three things operate separate of one another and are not motivated to help each other. So for that reason, there's so much money and so much incentive to not solve the homeless industrial complex that we're not even close, because politicians just choose one. Like, oh, I believe in body autonomy. That means a person should be able to shoot themselves up and poop on the street and sleep in a tent and hang over like a zombie during the day. That's body autonomy. So I will put my money into, drug centers that will give them sort of, I forget what it's called. Now there's a term for it where you regularly give them safer drugs, right? Or, oh no, I think people should have houses. So I'm going to put my money then in these countertops, marble countertop homes in LA for homeless people, even though the studies show that when homeless people are put, and drug addicted homeless people are put in those home shelters, they die at the same rate. They just die inside. In fact, faster, because they can do drugs inside rather than outside. So there's a lot of money there. So it's not just like, where's the money? It's like, we're not motivated to solve it in any kind of holistic way. There is some money going there, but it's mostly making people wealthy who are not homeless.
Well, Yeah. So I guess then just give the money to Ukraine then. We don't need it here in the United States because I guess money is not the answer. I guess infrastructure, actually jobs, creating a healthy environment, education in the United States, maybe not, throwing money at homelessness is not the answer, but actually creating an environment of safety in the United States and education and manufacturing and incentivizing businesses to do business and building roads that actually work and railways that actually transport things to and from the back and forth of the West Coast, East Coast at a high speed instead of the 1800s speed at which the U.S. rail system works now. So all of that to say that, yes, we're doubling down and giving more money to Ukraine. So, and Western media is now waking up shockingly over the past 48 hours. The Western media is now waking up to the fact that Ukraine's counteroffensive that started on June 4th was not a counteroffensive at all, but in fact a total failure, sent tens of thousands of Ukrainians to their death. Let's put it another way. NATO just sent tens of thousands of Ukrainian men to their deaths, and they know it, and they're purposefully doing it in Ukraine. Even CNN and pro-Ukraine reporter Jim Sciutto, who is a propagandist and a mouthpiece of the intelligence community, is being forced to admit the truth of the Ukraine situation. Watch how reluctantly he's admitting the truth here. Watch.
Long before Russian forces invaded, it was understood they outnumbered and outgunned Ukrainian forces. So when Ukrainian troops managed early on to roll back a good deal of that invasion force, hopes were initially high they could quickly finish the job. It's not worked out that way. And now, new reporting tonight that there's growing concern among Western allies about Ukraine's counteroffensive and its fate. In a moment, we'll talk to a retired three-star general for his take. But first, the exclusive reporting from CNN's Jim Sciutto, who joins us now. So what are you hearing from your sources about what they believe Ukraine's prospects are right now?
A markedly negative turn, Anderson, and these are sources I've been speaking to since the start of the counteroffensive, but even going back to the start of the war. And expectations of this counteroffensive were quite high, going back just a few weeks ago. But in recent weeks, as Ukrainian forces have encountered really intense Russian defenses in the east and the south, 3 lines of defensive lines, defensive belts as they're known, with trenches as you're seeing there, tens of thousands of mines, Ukrainian forces have not proven able to break through those lines. They've encountered staggering losses, I'm told, both in terms of killed in action and wounded in action. And Ukrainian commanders, in response to that, understandably have pulled back some of those units to save some of those casualties. And while even a few weeks ago the hope was that over time they'd be able to break through, more recently the assessments both on this side of the Atlantic but also in Europe have been that they don't quite see the opportunity. So that hope has faded. Not entirely faded, but it has certainly become a much less hopeful outlook for their prospects for success in gaining back significant territory.
Yeah.
Way to catch up.
Yeah, way to catch up. It's like forced to admit now the propaganda has run its course. Like, yeah, we were hopeful a few weeks ago. The sources that I was talking to since the beginning of this war, the sources were hopeful. No, they weren't hopeful at all. They knew that this is exactly how it would go. They were just spinning you a line of garbage that you would take to CNN to try to, force more money into the military-industrial complex and throw these men as cannon fodder. They don't give a shit about the Ukrainian people. They don't give a shit about these people at all. NATO doesn't care about the Ukrainian people at all. Get your heads out of your asses. Here's a captured Ukrainian intelligence officer who was part of the counteroffensive. He admitted yesterday that they had no plan at all. And the mission was simply to throw as many men as possible to their deaths. This is a Ukrainian commander. Watch.
Вам говорили, какие задачи?
Такого не рассказывали. Сказали, что надо перерезать дорогу куда-то, а куда? Вот к нашему батальону.
Ты же разведчик, ты командир отделения. Все равно должен же понимать какой-то примерно, хотя бы свою задачу.
Нам такого вообще не доводили. У нас разведка вот наша именно. Она на бумаге в основном.
Ощущение, как контрнаступ, как он развивается? Значит, вы начали 4 июня его.
Если за месяц контрнаступа этого 4 километра, или сколько там, 5, так это не контрнаступ, это я не знаю, что. И положить столько народа. Разговаривали, что прием тупо в лоб, эти батальоны посылают, как на убой.
Как парни на это реагируют?
Не ахти, все понимают, что наша бригада вроде бы как приманка или как.
Потери большие у вас?
Большие. Насколько я знаю, про первая рота, а первый мехбат, 31-й механизированный батальон, 31-й механизированной бригады. Там потери большие. До 120 человек, что я знаю. В строю оставалось 21 вместе с командиром.
Можно сказать, что контрнаступ, он провалился?
Можно и так сказать. Хотя я даже не знаю, где мы сейчас, где наши войска. Нам об этом вообще не говорят.
So we had no plan. They know they're throwing these people right into the meat grinder, and they are wildly untrained. And this is exactly what they want. They lose an entire brigades, entire mechanized brigades, just people just gone, destroyed, wiped out. The New York Times finally sent a reporter. Congratulate. Let's give it up to the New York Times. They sent a reporter to Ukraine. Can you imagine that? What's it like actually sending a reporter to the front lines to find out what's going on in this war? You mean not relying on what the Zelensky government tells you? You actually doing your own reporting? Now, you'll recall a number of months ago here on this very show, we showed you where CNN admitted they publicly admitted that reporters on the Ukrainian side are being kept away from the front lines. You'll recall this, right? This was a CNN report. CNN reporter then says, but we got exclusive access. The government allowed us to go to the front lines. Remember. And they like sort of teamed up with the tank brigade or whatever, mechanized brigade. And so they did like a sort of a propaganda piece, CNN did. But they admitted publicly that, no, you are not allowed to go to the front lines to report what's going on the Ukrainian side. They don't want you to see what's actually happening there. So the New York Times just sent a reporter and managed to get frontline access thanks to the Ukrainian government. And here's what the New York Times found in this big piece. Here's their headline. It's not a sprint. Ukraine's Marines insist it's a marathon. That's their headline. Journalists from the Times spent 2 weeks with troops from the brigades trained and supplied by NATO forces to get their I love this. We spent 2 weeks here. That's all we got. We got to go back to New York City. We can only do 2 weeks. That's it. We got to go back. So let's just kind of go through this New York Times piece here. Some brigades suffered heavy losses in the initial stages of the summer's counteroffensive. At least one new brigade was so badly debilitated from casualties that it was withdrawn from the battlefield to rebuild. They've received 4 to 6 weeks of training in combined arms combat. Just 4 to 6 weeks. As you know, Colonel Douglas McGregor talks about, that is unbelievably.
That's less than boot camp.
Yeah, that's an awful.
Yeah, don't they generally give kids more driving education to drive cars?
Right. 4 to 6 weeks. Most of the fighting has been hidden from the view of the news media. Oh, really? The New York Times is admitting that. Most of it's been hidden. But reporters from the New York Times were permitted to visit several Marine brigades, 2 of them newly formed brigades that are operating on one or part of the Southern Front to hear from the troops for the first time. So these are newly formed brigades being decimated, according to the New York Times, who spent 2 weeks there and who were finally granted permission to go. The new brigades are made up of fresh recruits, fresh from basic training after their.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
Stolen off the streets is another.
Yeah. Fresh. This is fresh meat coming in here. Really, really disgusting. Among the people.
In the same way roadkill is fresh meat to eat.
Right. That's exactly what this is. And as we reported here yesterday, we showed you the awful videos, or we didn't show you the videos, we told you about it. You can seek it out online if you want to, how these Ukrainian soldiers are sitting in trenches next to the bodies of their decomposing comrades who were killed weeks ago, days and weeks ago. And to look at those videos is it looks like photos from the Civil War, seeing these bloated corpses sitting next to they're sitting there smoking cigarettes, sitting next to, that's what's happening in these trenches. And NATO knows it, and NATO is throwing more money into it and wants these people to die. There's no other way around it. They know exactly what's happening.
I want to point out, too, that you shouldn't, if you have people that are calling in and volunteering, you shouldn't have to throw grenades in their bunkers to get them to fight.
Right. Which is what you're referring to. A few weeks ago, we showed video of a Ukrainian commander who there was members deserting and didn't want to fight and pulled a grenade out and threw it right into the trench. That's how you get them to fight or kill them. So the New York Times went through a couple of other key points here. Some Ukrainian brigades suffered heavy losses during the counteroffensive. At least one new brigade was so exhausted by losses that it was withdrawn from the battlefield to rebuild. New brigades of the armed forces of Ukraine are assembled from recruits who have just completed basic training, according to the New York Times. Ukrainian commanders are pushing recruits into battle and using untested units to launch a counteroffensive. They've never worked together before. They don't know how to run these drills. They don't know how to run actual campaigns. They don't know any of this. The New York Times also learned that Ukrainian soldiers are complaining about the lack of training received in NATO countries, as well as the fact, by the way, so think about this New York Times piece and CNN sort of simultaneously rolling out these pieces about the lack of training, the utter destruction of the Ukrainian military, staggering losses. That was the word from CNN, staggering losses. The New York Times saying all of these people are green. They don't have the training. They are being slaughtered. What do you guys make of this? What do you guys make of these sort of simultaneous media outlets of the New York Times and CNN, which are mouthpieces of the Biden administration and the Pentagon, rolling out these types of propaganda pieces sort of almost simultaneously, 24 hours apart? I'm just asking. What do you guys think?
I kind of feel that this is setting up for the U.S. to say, we did everything right, NATO did everything right, Ukraine just failed. Because the thing is, I see one of three things happening. That NATO planned this all along. They knew this would happen and they didn't care, which I think is the most likely. Russia did something major that was some sort of surprise that then they hadn't anticipated, which I haven't heard anything about that. Or the NATO leadership behind all this is completely incompetent. Which one of those things are they going to admit to? None of them. And so the only thing they can do is blame Ukraine.
Right.
And I think that's what they're setting them up for.
I think that there's been plenty of breadcrumbs to tell us that Western leaders wanted this war with Russia in Ukraine for a very specific reason. I think what's so interesting, though, is that they can spin all this and newly formed troops or, counteroffensive that would take their land back. They never show you the map. They never show you what's at stake. They never show you what the counteroffensive was supposed to look like. We show you this map all the time. In fact, can you pull it up on your?
I'm trying.
Oh, sorry. We try really hard to make sure that you have a sense of what is at stake and what they're trying to do for the counteroffensive. Because if in your head, I was talking to a relative lately and they're like, well, just all of Ukraine's being bombed. I'm like, no, only one part of it is at war and has been for a decade. And that's the contested part. And the counteroffensive was to regain that part, right? And so can we pull this map up? This is what the counteroffensive was supposed to do, was take all of that area red, that's red now, in Russian control, and turn it back to this sort of eggshell color in the center. Regain it for Ukraine. That is area that does not want to be Ukraine, that voted to be part of Russia, that has asked Russia to come and save them from the bombing since 2014, the shelling of civilians. You're throwing lives after lives, right? Now that Russia is there, at the very least, these people feel safer and not being terrorized by the SBU. What those blue dots are there are Ukrainian offensive. And so that's showing you actually where Ukrainians are launching their counteroffensive. The black are areas of heavy conflict. I can't remember off the top of my head what the yellow is. But the counteroffensive, they're saying what that guy just said, only got 4 to 5 kilometers. That's it. So all of those lives, all of that NATO money, how much more? $24 billion more. And there's no way, no matter how much is spent there, that border is going to be pushed back. And if you root for that, then you're rooting for, sorry, there's a bug. Then you're rooting for the people who live there to be in Ukrainian territory and be terrorized again by the SBU. And so it's a really hard conflict, right? And we need to have a sense of it, not just trust that CNN is like there and the war is everywhere. It makes it too esoteric that you can't wrap your head around if you don't really know what's at stake. And I find it so irresponsible that we never get to see maps in that way. And so that's one of the reasons as we cover this war that I'm so committed to just seeing what's there so we don't talk about it like ignorant a-holes.
One of the other things the New York Times points out is that they are criticizing, Ukrainians have been criticizing the American Max Pro armored vehicles that they've been receiving, which are designed to fight insurgents in Afghanistan on camels. They cannot.
What?
Well, they're designed to fight insurgents. And in the wars that the United States has been fighting over the past 20 years, which is against, guys on camels in the desert, basically. Not real armies. Not anyone with air power. Not a real army like the Chinese or the Russians. Literally guys on camels. And these American Max Pro armored vehicles cannot even withstand the firepower from the Russian army. They're being destroyed. So and more Bradleys are showing up. American Humvees are supposed to be arriving in the next few weeks. Many of them won't even arrive until the fall. One Ukrainian commander told the New York Times, quote, "I've lost many, and some of the newcomers are mentally broken." That's the status of the war right now. So the Biden administration doubling down, wanting to send $24 additional billion into the meat grinder so all of Ukraine can be totally destroyed. NATO wants Ukraine totally destroyed, and it wants this entire generation of men wiped out so they can do their bidding. I mean, just, BlackRock can swoop in and buy up and take up as much of the land as possible and turn it into some sort of aircraft carrier for NATO operations in the future. I don't know. If you know what their plan is, let us know in the chat below. But it's absolutely disgusting that the Biden administration continues to push this. And Congress will go along with it. Don't look for anyone really to push back on it. Maybe Rand Paul. But in the end, he'll vote for it because it seems like that's what they end up doing. And then this...
Definitely not the progressives that you thought were peacemongers like Bernie Sanders.
Justin Amash won't.
Yeah.
saying.
Maybe maybe the only one. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the only one. We'll see. We'll see how many other brave souls come forward and say enough is enough. No more of this craziness. I know Matt Gaetz, but I don't know if he'll vote for it. Who knows? Maybe MTG. We'll see. We'll see.
All right. Well, let's take note.
Yeah. We got more news to get to here on your Thursday. We're going to talk about the FBI targeting Catholics in coordinating field offices to target Catholics as possible terrorists. So I don't know if you're a Catholic out there, but watch out, because the FBI wants to look into you. We're also going to talk about Best Buy, about to be hit with a class action lawsuit, perhaps, because now they're gathering names after people who were applying for jobs. If you are white and you applied for a managerial job with Best Buy, sorry, you don't meet their criteria of skin color. And now gathering names for a possible class action lawsuit will bring you that story.
All right, well, let's talk about this FBI story because the FBI coordinated multiple field offices to target Catholics as possible terrorists. So the people who really hated Trump for the Muslim ban because it targeted Muslims as terrorists, they should be furious about this, right? Those same people.
You think, yeah.
They're not. Ironically, those same people who champion this are the ones who scream bloody murder when Islamic people are associated with terrorists. So that means that they're choosing. You can speak up against racial profiling of Islamic people, but say nothing when it comes to Catholics. You can't have it both ways. So just as a thought experiment, let's go over this story and let's kind of pretend, I'm going to talk about the FBI targeting Catholics, but pretend that this were instead about Muslims and ask yourself if the public response would be similar or different. In my opinion, all racial profiling is damaging. And so, do we choose only one group over the other? Let's just play that game, okay, as we go through this. So why would Catholics be associated with terrorist activities? The FBI memo said that traditional Catholics from the disfavored radical traditional Catholics groups could be characterized as embracing anti-Semitic, anti-immigrant, anti-LGBTQ, and white supremacist ideology. Now, here is the backstory and where that comes from. In February, a whistleblower leaked a heavily redacted report from the FBI's Richmond office called Interest of Racially or Ethnically Motivated Violent Extremists in Radical Traditionalist Catholic Ideology almost certainly presents new mitigation opportunities. Like, opportunities is a weird word. Like, this is a place we can go and find some ne'er-do-wells. Right. Catholic Church.
We haven't thought about this again. How about Catholic churches are a place where we can find some new opportunities for mitigation?
Right.
Like, surveillance and mitigation and arrests or kicking in people's doors.
It's almost like they want to find it there, right? Opportunities. It's just a strange word. It's not like, oh, that's a threat or this is a cause for concern. It's like, yeah, we can root out some bad guys there. Let's go find them, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are plenty of bad guys in a Catholic church.
Does it kind of seem...
And an Islamic church and a Jehovah's Witness church. I'm sure there's a lot of bad guys everywhere, right? But they're like, let's farm some out. Right here.
Well, I feel like the Mormon church, they're more libertarian leaning. It seems like that'd be a better target than Catholics. Like, I can't.
Oh, wait for those memos to come out.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
This is just slow your roll. I'm sure this is just one group of religious folks that we're targeting first.
Yeah.
You know, way to target these guys. And how about the $154 billion a year industry in child trafficking? The United States is the leading purveyor of it and the leading consumer of child trafficking.
Right.
Priorities, though. Go after the Catholics.
All right. Well, the sources that are used to validate this report to target Catholics as a hate group came from the Southern Poverty Law Center, and that's a group that targets conservative groups. And even the mainstream media acknowledges that this group is highly problematic. This is from the New Yorker in 2019. So this is how you source your report on targeting extremists, using another extremist group as your source. Like, you got to do your homework a little better than that, guys. Jim Jordan and Mike Johnson from the House Judiciary Committee sent a letter to Christopher Wray, head of the FBI, asking about this back in April. And Director Wray acknowledged that the memo was from the FBI, but was withdrawn. But whatever marching orders it had about Catholics, the die had been cast, right? He also said that the FBI was investigating itself to see how this memo came about. So don't worry about it. They're investigating yourself. Now, before you get, upset that they're investigating yourself, we can have, I want to say, like, there's a shred of hope here because the John Durham report seemed to have been well done in debunking Russiagate.
Yeah.
Right. So the FBI can investigate itself. We can hope that it can. We don't know how big of an investigation this will be, if it will be someone to the caliber of John Durham will be put on it, or if it's just one of those like, yeah, Mom, I cleaned my room, right, kind of things.
Right.
But
what are the socks doing still on the floor?
Right. We just don't know.
Right.
But this took a heavy-duty taxpayer-funded special prosecution for Russiagate. We just don't know how much we're going to get over this. They're targeting Catholics bit. Now, how did they validate this idea of Catholics as dangerous? They had at least one undercover employee who was infiltrating religious groups. This is from Jim Jordan's memo about this back in April, saying the FBI similarly noted 2 other opportunities. Again, there's that word, opportunities, to engage in outreach with religious institutions in the Richmond area, citing a desire to sensitize the congregation to the warning signs of radicalization and enlist their assistance to serve as suspicious activity tripwire. So basically, enlist whole church groups to be on the lookout for terrorists within their own organization. Now, that's kind of not what you're supposed to do at church. You're supposed to support each other to be good, not look out for who's bad. That creates this whole sort of judgmental, that defeats the purpose. I've been to church enough to know that. The FBI also expressed an interest in leveraging existing sources and or initiating Type 5 assessments to develop new sources with the placement and access to report on suspicious activity. This is Jim Jordan writing. The document itself shows that its contents, including its proposal to develop sources in Catholic churches, were reviewed and approved by 2 senior intelligence analysts and even the local chief division counsel. And so the whistleblowers have advised that the FBI distributed this documents to field offices around the country. Now, Director Wray said that this report didn't meet the FBI's exacting standards. And he told the House Judiciary Committee in July that, look, this was a one-off, that this report was a single product by a single field office. That's a direct quote. Turns out that wasn't true. It went to several offices.
So it wasn't just one bad apple, one field office. It was actually part of a larger network of field offices.
And so we know this because on Wednesday, the House Judiciary Committee sent a letter refuting this, saying the report was used in at least 2 other field offices, Portland and Los Angeles. That's interesting, right? Because those are places with problems of Antifa violence. Where's the memo on that? So this contradicts the testimony of Director Wray. Now, I'm going to play you his testimony, and it is a little long. I'm going to warn you, it's about 5 minutes, and we might stop and start a couple times because it's sort of hot. And Jim Jordan is getting to the bottom of this. Like, Why Catholics? How did this come about? You know, and it doesn't, I also want to say, in the spirit of spiritual collectivism, it almost doesn't matter if you're Catholic or not, because if you think about a group of people who are assembled with good intentions to worship around something that they hope makes their lives better and endears them to a community, and the FBI is saying, we're going to take those communities and use them as nesting grounds for bad guys and try and turn them on each other, it doesn't matter if it's Protestant or Catholic or Islamic or anything. It really shouldn't matter, because you should not want this for any well-intentioned group. Right now, I know we could go into problematic dogma around any given church, right? But I think collectively we should hope that these groups are not used for the intent of either entrapment.
Entrapment. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, look what happened with was it Meg Whitman?
Gretchen Whitmer?
I always said Meg Whitman. I'm thinking of like
she's
the New
the
Jersey.
person from eBay.
Gretchen Whitmer, but like putting in out of 24 people, putting in 21 undercover agents, and 3 of them are nefarious, and almost all of them are undercover in order to try to bring these people in or entrap these people, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think, you know, you can have whatever problems you want around organized religion or any kind of dogma or whatever, but it means a lot to a lot of people. And so to think that the FBI would use this as a place to root out certain people, it's basically, and I'm sorry I'm going to use this word about a religious organization, but you're bastardizing a organization that means a lot of things to a lot of people. And so for that reason, I find that, not just because I want to defend organized religion or defend Catholics, I think that there's more than just dogma here. So let's watch Jim Jordan take on Christopher Wray, and remember that what he says here turns out to not be true. So go ahead and
What's the difference between a traditional Catholic and a radical traditional Catholic?
I'm not an expert on the Catholic orders.
Well, your FBI wrote a memo talking about radical traditional Catholics. I'm just wondering if you could define it for us.
Well, what I can tell you is you're referring to the Richmond product, which was a single product by a single field office, which as soon as I found out about it, I was aghast and ordered it withdrawn and removed from FBI systems.
You were aghast, then why won't you let us talk to the people who put it together?
We are working on finishing an internal review into what happened there.
We have to wait. We, the Congress, and the American people have to wait until you do an internal review. It's not a criminal investigation going on here. An internal review before we can talk to the people who wrote this?
When we finish our internal review, which will be very soon, we will come back before the committee and provide a briefing on what we found.
Well, we appreciate the briefing, but we want to talk to the people who wrote it. Any idea how many Catholics there are in America, Director?
No, sir.
There's a lot, over 60 million. What percentage of those are radical traditional Catholics, according to the Richmond Field Office of the FBI?
Again, that product is not something that I will defend or excuse. It's something that I thought was appalling and removed it.
Let's read from that product, page 4 of that product. By the way, the copy you gave us, when can we get a copy that didn't have all these redactions on it so we can actually see what the American taxpayers were paying for to see their rights, their First Amendment religious liberty rights attacked? Let me just read from page 4. Provide new opportunities to mitigate extremist threat through outreach to traditional Catholic parishes and the development of sources with the placement and access to report on places of worship. That's pretty fancy language for they're trying to put informants in the parish, in the church. That's what this memorandum said, Director, from one of your field offices. And you won't let us talk to the people who did it. Any response to that?
I didn't know. I was waiting for the question.
No, you think priests should be informants inside the church, Director?
We do not recruit, open, or operate confidential human sources to infiltrate, target, report.
But that's not what this said. It sounds like you were trying to do it in Richmond, Virginia.
No, sir. No, sir.
You weren't? This didn't happen? You can assure us that this didn't happen?
That product did not, to as best as we can tell, result in any investigative action as a result of it. None.
You know what the motivation for this was? Why would they even think about doing this? You know what the motivation was?
Well, again, I think that's what our internal review will find, and I'd rather wait until I hear what the results of that internal review are.
Well, I don't need an internal review. I can read the document. I assume you can do the same. because it says right there on the same page, Richmond assesses extremist interest in radical traditional Catholics is likely to increase over the next 12 to 24 months in the run-up to the next general election. Same paragraph. Events in which extremist and radical traditional Catholics might have common cause include legislation, judicial decisions in such areas as abortion rights, immigration, affirmative action, and LGBTQ protections. It's politics. That's the motivation. In the run-up to the next election, and they talk about the border, affirmative action, and abortion rights, it's total politics. I mean, I think it's interesting that we just got a decision from a bunch of Catholics who sit on the United States Supreme Court relative to affirmative action. Politics was the total motivation here, and that's what's scary. That's what's, I think, so frightening, and how this happens, I don't know. And 5 people signed off on it. 5 people, including the Chief Division Counsel at the Richmond field office. I'd like to talk to this lawyer. And a lot of people in this room went to law school, get a course on the Constitution, talks about the First Amendment. I find that really scary. Again, when do you think we're going to have a chance? How soon are you going to complete this internal investigation so we can talk to these folks who put this together?
I expect us to be able to brief the committee on our internal review later this summer.
Will that briefing include the names of the individuals who put this document together attacking Americans' First Amendment liberty?
I'm not sure yet what it'll include because it's not done yet, but when it is, we'll provide you with an appropriate briefing.
What are you doing to fix it so this doesn't happen again?
Let's go ahead and stop this. So he says that no investigations were launched from this initiative, but later we were told that the redactions are to protect current investigations. So does that make sense to you? The FBI said, when they said, why are all these redactions here? And they said, well, those are to protect current investigations. But he just said there, no investigations came of this initiative.
Right. No, this he called it, what did he call it, a product? Mm-hmm. Almost like they're rolling out an Apple, like an iPhone.
Yeah.
No, that product never made it to market.
Right.
No, that product was never put into place. I squashed that. Oh, are you sure about that? In the Richmond field office, it never was enacted? No, that product never made it to. But we are redacting the names to protect ongoing investigations. Oh, okay. Something doesn't add up.
Something doesn't. Yeah.
You know what I
so
hear
like
when I hear that?
The ongoing.
Let's have Philip first, and then David.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that it's sort of like they're saying like I'm sure that the redacted part said all of this is unlike this other legitimate investigation which is going on, which that would be the only way it could be hiding other investigations is if it wasn't related to that because I mean sorry.
Go ahead, David.
It's okay. And what I was going to say is look at what he's saying, like LGBTQ, the abortion rights and stuff. How many things that have happened, crimes or whatever, that we found out later the FBI had talked to them, the FBI had encouraged it, the FBI was part of it. That sounds to me like they're wanting to infiltrate to get people to do things, to encourage them to do things, to
like January 6th?
Yeah, like January 6th, to push the democratic narrative of, what they're trying to push.
White supremacists in these churches.
Yep.
Well, that's what Joe Biden has said, that white supremacy is the most extreme threat that the United States faces currently. So
it's the biggest threat.
And so the FBI is going to do everything they can to try to make that true. But that's the thing. If they have to go try to make it true, then it isn't true.
Right.
Yes.
Isn't that inconvenient?
And I guess that's the only political angle, because they said we need to ramp this up in advance of the election because it's going to get worse. So says this hate group that we sourced.
I got a question for you. I'd be curious how many FBI agents are churchgoers?
Are Catholics.
Are Catholics.
Yeah.
And what are the percentage of FBI agents that actually go to church who are religious? Wouldn't anyone put their foot down to this
and say this is wrong? And also, those are protected beliefs. To be anti-LGBTQ and to be anti-abortion is allowed.
By the way, the most vocal group, by the way, it's very important. Like in Canada right now, the most vocal, outspoken group against the LGBTQ plus indoctrination of gender ideology in children are Muslims. And the Christians have been waking up in Canada saying, wait a second, The Muslims are coming out and they're doing the loudest.
They're doing what we should have been doing.
Yeah, and now they're joining together and they're launching this 1 million person march in Canada on September 20th or 21st or whatever. So Muslims. And that's interesting, right? Because this is exactly what the left doesn't want to admit. They don't want to have any denigration or acknowledgement of Muslims who have been very outspoken against the LGBTQ plus indoctrination of children, saying, keep your hands off our children. Don't be pushing surgeries or, hormones or puberty blockers or anything on our children. And when you hear that said, of course, that's, you hear for what's her name, former Jen Psaki, former White House press secretary, says that when Muslims say that or say that out loud, they're only being influenced by the far right, that they're not free thinking.
Right. That is also the talking
And
point
don't you
of
think it's
Justice Freedom.
Go ahead,
Don't you think it's possible that like the FBI has people that like in that field office that get together that definitely are Democrats, definitely are pushing that agenda, and they kind of like group together, and some people don't know? Because like you said, how could you have a whole office be on board with this if there were Catholics, Republicans, if it was a split thing? So it has to be a group of people getting together and doing this outside of the system.
Right. And again, it's based on such thin ice, the way they sourced it. They're not like, oh, this one congregation in, I don't know, Chattahoochee, wherever, like it is more of an extremist than these ones that are in Tulsa. Like they have no proof. It's just they're sourcing it from a think tank. And so again, they should have more proof before they actually launch this initiative. Like, oh, maybe because some more investigations are coming from this. I mean, this is sort of like secret police society that we should be afraid to live in. We now have novels about how that happened in the last 100 years in certain society. In Portugal, the secret police or the Bolsheviks or what have you. I don't think this is what we collectively want, no matter what, again,
and
you
why
think
don't
of
you
religion.
Why don't you start with the most violent like Antifa and then work yourself backwards? You know what I mean? Like infiltrate those groups first if you're going to infiltrate groups.
Right.
And work your way back to nonviolent.
Yeah. Now, surprisingly, the Wall Street Journal even found this unacceptable. Here is from a staff opinion piece dated August 9th saying that, this was unacceptable. And I'm going to show you the end of this piece because I was kind of shocked that the Wall Street Journal took this freedom of liberty stance, saying that also troubling is that the FBI redacted the Portland and Los Angeles roles from the original version, which means they knew originally that it was not just one field office. So even Director Wray, even if I think it was only from Richmond, it never went anywhere. Well, he had to have seen the non-redacted version, which mentioned those two places. So then he would have known this, unless he just didn't read the non-redacted version, which is very hard to believe, right? In a letter, it said with the less redacted version, acting FBI Director Christopher Dunham said the redactions had been necessary to protect information specific to ongoing criminal investigations. Again, if that's true, why did Director Wray said no active investigations came from this memo? So the Wall Street Journal is asking what changed from March until July other than the threat of contempt from the Judiciary Committee. It's hard not to conclude that the Bureau was trying to hide the breadth of its Catholic as radicals investigation. Now, Jim Jordan's letter on Wednesday asked the FBI to fully explain the nature and scope of the FBI's assessment of traditional Catholics as potential domestic terrorists. He intends to interview the special agent in charge of the Richmond field office, and he repeats his request to interview the chief division counsel who approved the Richmond field report. Mr. Wray understandably defends his bureau's integrity, but he undermines that effort when he or his deputies aren't candid about what really happened. Not candid or just not telling the truth. There's another word for that, right? You're not supposed to lie to Congress. So either he really didn't read the non-redacted version, or he spun us a tale. So let us know what you think of this in the chat, and what you think in general of the idea of targeting religious groups in the United States, which is supposed to be the freest country in the world.
I have some things to say about COINTELPRO. And, you know, this is an issue. First of all, we've covered COINTELPRO here on the show, and we've also covered the FBI infiltrating all sorts of drug groups and hippie communes in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've covered it actually pretty extensively here on the show. Talked about the CIA infiltration of these groups, and of course, going back decades, right? So someone in the chat, I like this super chat from Ty313 says, will you all have the same energy on COINTELPRO? You all say January 6th and Catholic all things, but you right people forget history. Just pick and choose and talk about the FBI doing illegal things. No, not at all. We have no sides in this. The fact that they're doing illegal things and infiltrating groups back in the 1950s, first of all, you're referring to COINTELPRO as an old story from 50 years ago. We are covering a story from today. So we could literally go through and relitigate all sorts of stories if you want. This could be a history show, and we could just have energy about things in the past. We're covering this story today. I mean, it's totally up to you. But COINTELPRO, absolutely. The FBI illegally infiltrated the Black Panthers, they literally assassinated members of the Black Panther group. I mean, they literally infiltrated feminist organizations, right? So they went after left-wing feminist organizations and infiltrated them as being a threat to society. They went after the Black Panthers. They infiltrated hippie communes all throughout California, drug dens, you name it. And they actually encouraged
anti-war protesters.
That's the word. Yeah,
like
anti-war protesters.
Abby Hoffman.
Exactly. Yeah. And they encouraged them to do really bad things. So the CIA and the FBI has a long history of this, a very long history of this. You can read a great book. I just finished a book. It's pretty long. It's like 1,000 pages. I think it's called Chaos. I'll look up the name of the book, but it's literally about the Manson murders. But it's more not just about the Manson murders, but it's really about the CIA and the infiltration of these anti-war movements and the Bay Area and Berkeley and all of this stuff. So they've been doing nefarious things for decades. If you watch our show open, I think you'll realize that, no, we are not in favor of this deep state and the collusion here, this sort of engineering of narratives and trying to force these things, infiltrating the media to push fake stories. And that's what they were doing with COINTELPRO. So I just want to be very clear. We're talking about this story today, but I have absolute contempt for everything that they've been doing for decades.
Yeah, and I just want to point out too, we have lost control of every branch of our government. There is not a single branch of our government that we still have control over. We've lost it all. Like, so, you know, and it started in the 50s or whatever, even before that probably. And with the CIA, then the FBI, there's not a single organization that we have control over anymore. And that's dangerous. That's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, even the post office. Maybe the post office.
I'll have to think on that.
You have to think about it.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I say mail's coming Saturday. I don't get it.
I mean, that
Monday,
was hugely politicized. You know, remember like the Postmaster General, like a few years ago, like where they're basically they're trying to like tank the USPS. I mean, it's all been politicized. It's all, even the Supreme Court.
Rachel Maddow told me that it was because Trump didn't want mail-in votes. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so they're all corrupt. Anyway, let us know your thoughts on that in the comments below. So I do have energy for it. Thank you very much, TYT313. I appreciate that.
Do you want to throw another historical challenge at us and see?
I just love that.
Funny thing.
Where's your contempt for the Civil War? Well, I'm talking about the U.S. is now going to invade Niger right now. But yeah, I'm pissed about the Civil War. If you like me to be, I'm pissed about World War I. I'm pissed about all of these fake wars that we were forced into under false pretenses. World War II, yeah, we knew what Japan was about to do, and we let it happen. That's okay. But hey, I'm fine with it. I'm fine that all these millions of people lost their lives. Totally cool. All right, coming up here on the show, we're going to talk about this Best Buy lawsuit, this class action lawsuit, after the company banning white people from managerial positions. Maybe you'll be forced to, I don't know, stop buying overpriced things at Best Buy and going there for your crappy Geek Squad coverage. They can't, you know.
My mom likes Geek Squad.
Do you?
Be careful. My mom does, yeah.
Okay.
They're at least nicer to her than when she calls me and I'm like, Mom, it's in the settings.
Turn it off and back on again.
Yeah.
Well, we here at Geek Squad we decided to install some software on your computer. We'll be monitoring it back home at the home office. Hope everything's fine. Trust Best Buy to be able to take care of your stuff. And we're going to look at what's going on in Spain with those Spanish elections. And will they become part of the unipolar order, continue the unipolar march, or will they try to go sovereign and actually stand up? Will there be a Spain exit like Brexit? Will there be a sort of a sovereign Spain rising up again? Plus, we're going to look at Canada tonight. We're covering all of the stuff. What did I say? COINTELPRO Pro. COINTELPRO Pro. But anyway, don't pick on me. Clayton keeps saying COINTELPRO. I like calling it that. Anyway, we've got more news to get to here I'm on fire today. I'm a little hopped up on caffeine right now. So before we get there, the other news, let's talk about our friends over at Shopify. If you hear the sound of crickets, you know you're missing out on another sale because you're not selling on Shopify. And what does it sound like to sell with Shopify? Well, cha-ching. Opening up your cash register, right? And it's much better. If you run an online business, why are you not using Shopify? It's so easy to get your store up and running. If you have an idea for a store, you can be up and running in minutes. It's amazing. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. I was actually talking to a friend today about this because he was thinking about doing some things with some different products. And I said, it's so easy to get set up. You can be up and running in no time. And it can be totally hands-off, by the way. You don't have to be managing it constantly, writing code and all of these things. You can literally sit back and they'll handle everything. Shopify makes it very, very easy. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur making T-shirts or you're a larger company, Shopify is the only tool you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. Very, very easy. What I love about Shopify is no matter how big you are or how small you are, Shopify grows with you. So we actually launched our Shopify store ourselves here at Redacted. RedactedStore.com is built on Shopify. So if you come over there and you grab a t-shirt or a mug to support our show, you can see that it's all built on Shopify. So it's very, very easy. You can sign up for a $1 per month trial at shopify.com/redacted. That's all lowercase. Just go to shopify.com/redacted to take your business to the next level today. Again, that's shopify.com/redacted. So our thanks to them. Well, here's a question for you. Would you like to be offered a job based on your hard work and your qualifications, or simply the color of your skin? Well, the electronics giant Best Buy thinks the color of your skin is apparently more important for managerial positions. This could be Best Buy's Bud Light moment, and they could be hit with a massive class action lawsuit as a result. We'll get to that part of the story in a moment. But here's how the Washington Examiner puts this headline. Time to Bud Light Best Buy. Best Buy faces blowback for leadership training program that excludes white applicants.
That's a good alliteration.
Yeah, it's hard to say. But people online saying this is their Bud Light moment. Time to Bud Light. Now it's a verb. You're going to Bud Light a company. That means, you're boycotting them, right? So what's going on here? Well, journalist James O'Keefe broke this story over at his O'Keefe Media Group from a citizen journalist who had turned over documents to him. They uncovered documents showing that Best Buy is partnering with McKinsey & Company. Many of you know McKinsey & Company for their management training program. I see many people joking that's a total waste of time. Nevertheless, they are teaming up with McKinsey training program. If you want to become a manager at Best Buy, you won't be allowed to if you are white. Yes, Best Buy is banning white people from becoming a manager. Here is the application page in order to register for the application training program. They're circled in yellow. You're currently working in an exempt salary role. These are people who are not, these are people who must meet these requirements in order to be considered for the managerial position in the different development plans.
At least it says identify. So if I identify as one of those as a white man, I still
Oh, exactly.
There you go.
See, that's
I like
all
your
I
ingenuity.
like, and I like your positivity because I thought the same thing. Here, take a closer look at what it says here. These are requirements you must have. You have to identify as Black. You have to identify as Latino, Hispanic, Asian, or Pacific Islander. So yeah, David, if you identify as Black,
Like Rachel Dolezal.
yeah, exactly, Rachel Dolezal, then you could apply for this job. And then when you walk in, they're like, you're not Black. Well, it doesn't matter. You see you see a different color, but I identify as black, so I like the job. Odd, they also left Native Americans off this list. I guess they forgot about them.
I mean,
or
they may as well be
them.
white. They were the first white people.
Right. So they identify as white. So I guess they just get lumped in with white, right? Is that how this works? I guess. But what's weird about this is, so if I did some digging on this, I went to their website to see if this comports with what they say publicly, because this is a private registration page. This isn't public. But if you go to Best Buy's website, they publicly pretend not to discriminate based on the color of your skin. Here's their Best Buy statement on equal opportunity. Best Buy is committed to a policy of equal employment opportunity. Best Buy will not discriminate on the basis of age, sex, race, color, creed, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, national origin, alienage, or citizenship, disability, marital status, military or veteran status, or any other legally recognized protected basis under federal, state, or local laws, regulations, or ordinances. Okay. So I guess white, who cares about white people, right? Just that's not part of this protected class, I guess. Doesn't really matter. So
somebody needs to tell that girl that's tattooed head to toe that's having a problem getting a job that she could go to Best Buy then.
I suppose. Well, what's she underneath all those tattoos? Is she white?
She identifying as white?
You can't really tell. She looks like she could be some color of green.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't know if green people are listed here. What about it? What about aliens? We don't know. So America's First Legal. Here's where the class action lawsuit appears to be brewing, because any group of legal people that are putting out calls to have you reach out to them. If you're a current Best Buy employee who does not qualify for this program because of your race, we want to hear from you today. American First Legal, gathering names. You can call their hotline right now and join up, because who knows what's coming. How many people were kept out of getting this managerial position because of that? I love what John Matrix had to say over at the Black and White Network. I really liked his take on this. Listen.
Everyone now is being judged on skin color. Companies out there are being super duper woke. I told you guys that I would never ever accept a job knowing that I actually got the job because I'm black. If the company actually told me, hey, we're going to give you this job, we have white guilt, we're hiring you because you're black, I'm going to tell them no. I am not taking this job, because what you did was just insult me. It's pretty racist. Because you're not hiring me based on my qualifications. It's based off my skin color. I don't like that. I don't like that whatsoever. These woke corporations, man, they're going to go down in flames.
Yeah.
That reminds me of when Idris Elba was saying, they're like, hey, you can be the first black James Bond. He's like, I don't want to be the first black anything. Like, why does that matter?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, can we not come up with our own character? Like, James Bond is a white character from Ian Fleming novels who's a white guy. Like, can't we come up with a great black leading character? We need to, do that? It's ridiculous. So just looking at Best Buy stock today, it was interesting to see, pre-market, when all this news was breaking, it was $79 a share. And it's actually up. So at the close today, close of the market, it's now over $80 a share. So I don't know what the hell's going on with Best Buy. I don't know if people is this the calm before the storm here, or what happens? Or maybe nothing happens. Maybe there's no storm at all and no one pays any attention to it.
Maybe it's just outrage fatigue. People are like, oh, I can't do that one. I'm still busy boycotting Bud Light.
No, I can't. You know what? I need my HDMI cables. I need to go to Best Buy.
Well, this is about investors. This is not about, actual
sales. But I mean, if you're an investor and you're seeing this right now, you're seeing, oh my God, are we about to see a 25% plunge like we saw with Anheuser-Busch?
Right.
Is this?
Well, I'll tell you what, as somebody who buys a lot of tech gear because I do studio builds and stuff like that, I used to look sometimes to see if Best Buy had things before I would go to Amazon, and I will not do that now.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people saying, no, there's plenty of other, not even just Amazon, but individual sort of electronics retailers that maybe even use the Amazon back end or whatever. But yeah, let us know in the chat. What do you guys think about this? Will you guys continue to shop at Best Buy? Let us know what you think about this, or is a shitstorm about to hit the electronics store fans and Best Buy.
Okay.
We'll see. I don't know.
Like a Roomba going over your dog.
They're on their way to be in Circuit City.
A Roomba going over your dog poo. The new Roombas have dog poo sensors?
Yeah, they're supposed to not
Because like
do
when
that.
people would come home, like their Roomba would go off at their scheduled time, and they'd come home and like the dog had pooped in the house, and then the Roomba had just like pushed it all around the house.
Yes.
Did you ever read that? Did you ever read that original story? The guy that first did that post, the first person that like where that all came from?
No.
Because he wrote a whole story about it, and it is you have to look it up. If you can find the original story, I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. But it's absolutely hilarious.
Okay.
Like the guy's description of what happened in the carnage that ensued. It was just it's a great little write up.
Yes, I want that.
You know what I would do? I would move. Like if I came home and saw that a vacuum cleaner had ingrained dog poop in in all the carpet,
You can't sell
because
that house.
I wouldn't know where it all is, and I wouldn't know. Like I wouldn't be able to handle it.
I'd have to replace
move.
all the carpet, or replace all the flooring.
Does the real estate agent have to disclose that, like they do deaths and stuff? Like we have to
Murders?
disclose that there was a poop massacre.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. Certain states require real estate agents to disclose if the house is haunted.
Yes, California is one of them.
I think New Jersey is a state that has to
I don't
disclose
know,
hauntings.
or maybe certain counties. My mom was an escrow agent in Alameda
California.
County, and
You have to, if it's haunted, they have to
Yeah.
disclose it, right? And also if a murder happened there or something like that.
there was a house that was contested because the grandma was asleep upstairs and the mattress wrapped around her, and they had to the realtor had to tell that haunting had happened. Yeah, that's a crazy story.
Really?
This is like real estate stories that
What do you mean it was
we used to hear.
contested? Oh, because a person had died there.
No, because the
Oh, she
lady
was
was
asleep?
alive and the mattress wrapped
In the
around
middle of the
her,
night,
like as the grandma was asleep. I mean, I don't know if this is a true story. This is like Bay Area real estate stories.
Sounds like the mattress on Money Pit.
And yeah, and because they said the house was possessed, they had to disclose this to the buyer that this happened. Grandma
So-
thinks she was attacked by the mattress.
Yeah, this house may be haunted. The previous owner says a mattress in the middle of the night wrapped around her. Do you want to buy the house?
It's grandma, after
Right.
all.
She might have been having
And
a little.
so they were like, did this
little
really
whiskey.
happen? Or was that grandma? And it came out that they had to tell that to the buyer.
Grandma liked to nip her whiskey before bed, so we don't know what actually happened, but
Yeah.
could have.
Okay, this was a fun story for me as a child. Please don't debunk it because I need this to be true.
You need this to be true.
You know,
You're
have
hanging on to that.
crazy stories from
Oh,
your
yeah.
childhood. This is
Oh,
like
yeah,
my
like-
Stranger Things.
like-
Please do not challenge that.
Like the mountains near Camp Conrad Weiser in Pennsylvania, where the guy with the hook for a hand used to roam into we would tell
That
camping
sounds
stories.
borrowed. It kind of like that, or anyone from the Bay Area know the Niles Canyon ghost. These are important stories to my childhood. I cannot have them debunked at this point. Okay,
Hey, it
let's
happened to
move
me.
on.
My life story, Mikey with the Pop Rocks candy. That story
Uh-huh.
got debunked, and I was so bummed because I thought that was totally true.
All right. Let's move on. We're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about next?
We're talking about Spain.
We're going to talk about Spain.
Yeah, well, Spain. Well, we see a Spain exit, like we've seen the British exit, the Brexit. After these round of elections, we're going to look into Spain. We're also going to talk about Trudeau's government in Canada with this $100 million war chest. Which, I'm calling it a war chest because of who they're targeting now in Canada. We'll tell you about that. And it's people who, well, I'll tell you right now, it's people who speak out against LGBTQ plus indoctrination of children. That's who Trudeau wants to go after because they think you are causing pain and discrimination and, all sorts of problems. So we'll get there in a second.
All right, but first we want to tell you about our friends over at Genucel, because if you look in the mirror and you see those dark spots, well, they're not going to go away on their own, gals. So we're introducing the Dark Spot Corrector from Genucel right in time for summer. The Dark Spot Corrector, with not one but 3 cutting-edge ingredients, goes to work fast to target sunspots, dark spots, liver spots, and even old discoloration, both on your face and hands. You'll be amazed to see how quickly you see results, and you can enjoy your summer sun then, your beach, barbecues, without those embarrassing spots. With Genucel, you'll see results or your money back, no questions asked. You can go right now to Genucel.com/redacted and get your dark spot corrector with the new Genucel Most Popular package featuring summer essentials like the best-selling Ultra Retinol Moisturizer with a powerful retinol alternative for safe use in the summer sun. So visit Genucel.com/redacted right now for these amazing summer essentials and save over 70% off of Genucel's Most Popular package. Don't wait. Order today, free shipping, free returns, and the best luxury skincare you've ever used, all at 70% off. So that's Genucel.com/redacted. You see it there on your screen, Genucel.com/redacted. All orders will include a mystery luxury gift while supplies last. One more time, Genucel.com/redacted.
Can the country of Spain break out of the U.S.-led unipolar world order and exert its sovereignty once again? That's what our Washington correspondent Dan Cohen sought to find out when he went to a small village in Spain, which is right now ruled almost entirely by the far right-wing party, the Vox Party. Here's his report.
Spain's 2023 national election has come and gone. While the results remain uncertain, according to the media, one thing is clear. The far right-wing Vox Party suffered a collapse and is facing near irrelevance. While Vox did perform poorly, in regional and local elections just 2 months earlier, it made huge gains.
Hoy se produce, sin ninguna duda, la consolidación del proyecto político de Vox como proyecto nacional que poco a poco está llegando al último rincón de España.
Francisco Garcia Avilés is the mayor of Puente de Génove, a town of 2,100 located in the Jaén region of Andalusia. He is one of 25 new mayors that belong to the Vox Party, including in 5 regional capitals.
What has occurred here not only tells us about this village, but it tells us a lot about what's going on at the national and even international level and the profound political transformation occurring across Western liberal democracies.
Vox formed in 2013 as an offshoot of the center-right Popular Party, funded by the Iranian opposition cult the Mujahideen al-Khalq, formerly listed as a terrorist group in the United States and European Union. Garcia Avilés' election represents the first time Puente de Génove's top office is held by someone not from the Popular Party or the center-left Socialist Workers of Spain Party. Until now, he has refused all requests for interviews. However, he agreed to sit down with me. His resounding victory in the election came as a surprise to almost everyone, himself included.
Pues mi análisis, vamos a ver, es sencillo. Esperar llegar al poder, sí, lo barajamos, pero en coalición con el PP. Porque aquí la gente está muy cansada ya no de socialismo, sino del actual gobernante.
Garcia Avilés portrays himself as an outsider to politics.
Yo no soy político, es que yo no soy político.
Yet he admits that he belongs to a prominent political family.
De hecho, mi abuelo fue alcalde del Partido Popular, la antigua Alianza Popular, pero que, ya te digo, yo de política era totalmente virgen.
While he speaks about his commitment to tradition and conservative values, he's willing to bend the rules for the right opportunity. In June, on Pride Day, Vox Party officials condemned and even removed LGBTQ flags. One Vox official called it the flag of pedophilia. On that occasion, Garcia Avilés broke with his party and hung the flag outside of City Hall, a move that earned him praise in Spanish national media.
Del LGBTI, yo puse la bandera, y vos tú lo sabes que está en contra totalmente de la bandera. Yo lo que no creo es los chiringuitos que surgen como consecuencia de ese tipo de cosas. Pero si alguien se siente representado con algo tan mundano como una bandera, qué barato te sale el peaje, ¿no?
The Vox Party has sought to weaken the stigma associated with Spanish dictator Francisco Franco, who ruled with an iron fist from 1939 until his death in 1975, and allied with Nazi Germany in World War II. Vox leader Santiago Abascal said that the government of Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez of the center-left Socialist Party has been the worst in 80 years, including during the reign of Franco. Asked about Franco, Garcia Avilés avoids taking a position.
Vamos a ver, el franquismo, para bien o para mal, no deja de ser algo que pertenece a la historia de este país. Y todo aquel que quiera borrar su historia está condenado a repetirla. Tuvo sus cosas buenas y tuvo sus cosas malas, pero como todo, vamos, no lo defiendo porque no lo he vivido. Entonces, como no he vivido esa época, no te puedo decir si ha sido bueno o malo.
However, his office is adorned with a miniature Franco doll, which he prefers I don't film. On social media, García Avilés is explicit in his support for fascism.
Yo tengo la virtud o el defecto de decir las cosas como las pienso y de decirlas a la cara. Y eso o cae muy bien o cae muy mal.
He praises Nazi Germany, saying, "To be a National Socialist is to love your land and your people, its traditions and customs." On another profile, he called to shoot a socialist group and not leave even one. Joaquín Castillo Martínez is a baker in Puente de Geneve and is also a correspondent for Diario Jaén, the main regional newspaper. He has closely followed García Avilés' rise to power.
Si analizamos la lista de Vox, son gente que son familias muy numerosas, alrededor de unos 400 votos más los que ya disponían de los concejales del PP que se fueron a Vox, que la mayoría evidentemente se fueron del PP a Vox, sumando unos 400 votos más otros 200 y pico votos, son los 675 votos que Vox sacó en Puente de Geneve. Utilizaron una estrategia, se adentraron en la juventud.
García Avilés has also used a populist appeal, promising to construct a bullfighting arena where his predecessor had budgeted to build a theater. I spoke to the former mayor Ramón Gallego, who belongs to the Socialist Workers' Party of Spain. I asked him about Vox's victory in Puente de Geneve.
Yo la verdad es que no lo entiendo, ni muchísima gente no lo entiende, ¿no? Porque no son opiniones, digamos, de un político normal, superando ya pues las barreras ideológicas, cada uno pensamos de una manera, ¿no? Eso va muchísimo más allá y va incluso no ya de la buena educación, sino de otras cosas, ¿no?
Socialist Workers' Party members were repressed, exiled, and executed during the dictatorship. After Franco's death, the party returned to Spain and quickly became a major force in the return to democracy. As soon as they took power, they began to shift away from their worker-focused discourse to liberal policies oriented around Spain's relationship with the United States, established during the Franco dictatorship. Over the following decades, Spain underwent a process of privatization, austerity, and neoliberal economics, overseen by the Socialist Workers' Party and its center-right counterpart, the Popular Party.
Son muy parecidos, el PSOE al PP, porque lo que quieren es acumular sus votos. Da igual que tengan que hacer esto, que tengan que hacer otro, con tal de estar en el gobierno. Para mí, eso es lo que me ha defraudado. Que no tienen la opinión esa como nosotros teníamos de decir, no, yo soy socialista y yo hago esto y esto y esto, pero si no tengo que gobernar, no gobierno. Pero yo mis ideas no las cambio.
The Socialist Worker Party's neoliberal policies create an opportunity for figures like García Avilés to exploit.
El Partido Socialista Obrero Español ha dejado de ser socialista, obrero y español. El socialismo defiende otras ideas y esto ya hemos llegado a una degradación de lo que es el partido.
Jaén, the region where Puente de Geneve is located, is the world's top producer of olive oil. Fields containing some 66 million olive trees stretch as far as the eye can see in all directions. However, there is little economic opportunity outside of agriculture. Many young people see Vox as an alternative to the establishment and Socialist Worker Party's neoliberal brand of socialism.
La generación de nuestros padres, que eran los más de izquierdas, que los que han vivido, pues han vivido con la dictadura. Y entonces eso eran muy socialistas, pero esa generación se ha muerto la mayoría. Con lo cual se ha quedado ahí un hueco vacío. La siguiente generación que éramos nosotros, le hemos seguido votando al PSOE. Pero la gente joven, desde que nacieron hasta ahora, que tienen 35, 36 años, no ha visto nada más que PSOE. Y yo pienso que esa generación quería un cambio y de ver otras cosas.
At the international level, Vox, like the Socialist Party and all other Spanish political parties, is fervently pro-Ukraine. Vox leader Santiago Abascal accuses his political opponents of being Putin supporters.
Todos ustedes son cómplices directos de esta agresión de Rusia contra Ucrania. Ustedes y el Grupo de Puebla al que pertenecen. No estoy exagerando. Ustedes son los aliados internacionales de Putin.
Yet the Socialist Party and the Spanish establishment have sought to discredit Vox with the exact same method.
Esta gente de Vox en España ha tenido lazos directos con Moscú, por ejemplo. Ha sido no ya con países como Hungría, como Polonia, que también los tiene muy estrechos, estrechísimos, sino que eran aliados, entre comillas, de los postulados de Putin. Santiago Abascal y toda su camarilla, pues han sido hasta hace muy poquito, ya se cuidan mucho de abrir la boca en ese aspecto. Pero en la OTAN no, en la OTAN pasan de puntillas, pero sí que hay y debe de haber ha habido una estrecha relación con la Rusia de Putin.
This messaging, combined with censorship of alternative outlets like RT and Sputnik, have even convinced older generations of self-described socialists that support for war in Ukraine is worthwhile.
Si lo que tenemos que hacer es eliminar a Putin, yo si pudiera sí lo mataba, pero no puedo. ¿Qué medios tengo yo para eso?
Ramon Gallego continues to believe in the same formula that led to Vox's rise.
Joe Biden, por ejemplo, Estados Unidos, está en la misma sintonía que nosotros en temas militares o en temas de política exterior. Siempre hemos ido a rebufo de Estados Unidos, siempre, y lo seguimos siendo, por el tema de Rusia, la guerra de Ucrania, los Balcanes. Hay un montón de temas que siempre hemos ido a rebufo.
As Vox slowly gains power, the village of Puente de Geneve is a microcosm of how Spain's liberal democracy is trapped in a cycle of electing political parties that advance the same fundamental agenda.
And Dan joins us now. Dan, I think clearly one of the most compelling pieces of this is that you have a mayor of a town who openly supports Nazi Germany. Like, it's not even quiet about it. Openly supports Franco. I mean, how did a liberal democracy trend so far towards like the darkest days of its history? It seems like this is now in fashion.
I think it says everything about Spain's political system and its political trajectory that 3+ decades after the end of the Franco dictatorship, which did not end through, violent revolution or armed struggle, it just kind of magically transitioned into democracy. We see there are a lot of the structures in some ways are remaining. The same oligarchy is in power from the Franco days, and the failures of liberal democracy to actually deliver concrete gains for the people of Spain. First, well, I'd look at what happened a decade ago with the rise of the Occupy movement. That happened in Spain too, and what came out of that was the Podemos party. And they promised all kinds of major change. And what did they do? They ended up playing the game just like the Socialist Party or the Popular Party did. And so, they were part of the system. That critique of, the 1% versus the 99%, just like we had in the United States, that kind of fizzled out and they lost their credibility. So now the Vox Party, founded in 2013, comes around, and it's steadily grown as the sort of neoliberal system has alienated the working class, and they're looking for an alternative. And, they have we want to make Spain great again, that kind of thing. Well, in Spain, when you're talking about its history, you don't have to look far to look at what happened under Franco, which allied with Hitler in World War II. And so the youth who don't have that sort of memory, who have, grown up with in Spain's democracy, see Vox as sort of the anti-establishment party, as the cool thing to do. And so history is sort of repeating itself in a way, but fundamentally, none of these parties, whether Vox, whether Podemos, the sort of, left-wing corollary to Vox, none of these parties challenge the fundamental relationship of Spain with the European Union, with NATO, with the United States, and none of them actually, despite Vox's talk about sovereignty and making Spain proud and all this stuff, none of them actually are willing to say, wow, what is Spain's role in the European Union as the kind of a vacation spot for Brits and Germans. We need industry. We need to be self-sufficient. These are not the kinds of things that are being discussed. It's all, about the kind of the culture wars, and we're going to roll back all the, trans stuff that the left has pushed, which, fundamentally does not address the real needs of the middle class, the working class, and everyone worships Zelensky. Everyone wants this Ukraine war. All of them. The Vox Party supports it, and the and all the way to the Podemos Party. So there's within these very strict ideological barriers, you have this so-called democracy, but it starts and ends with the United States.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? So they can have all of this talk, all of this bluster, but when it comes down to it, no, it's still the unipolar European Union, corrupt European Union that they're sort of stand there kissing the feet of always, and they will of course trend back to supporting the things that the European Union wants and what Brussels actually wants. So no Spain exit anytime soon, right? No Spexit. No Spexit.
Yeah, I don't see a Spain exit on the table, even if the Popular Party in coalition with Vox comes into power. I mean, fundamentally, they're all neoliberal parties, despite their sort of bluster about nationalism and reclaiming sovereignty and making Spain great again and this kind of thing. I think it's really interesting to see the Spanish left celebrate that Vox did not get as many votes, as many seats as they were sort of projecting, as they were worried about, as if they've defeated Vox, they've vanquished it, when Vox is actually the third largest party in Spain now, bigger than its left-wing corollary, the Podemos party, which is basically totally irrelevant now politically in Spain. So this force is still very powerful, and even though it didn't win big at the national level, at the local and regional level, it made huge gains, and I don't think it's going anywhere, and it's just a symptom of being in the EU, NATO, US-led order.
Interesting. Very similar to, I guess, Democrats and Republicans back home. There's a lot of talk, but when it comes to actually making America great again, they sell themselves out. But that's political parties for you. Dan Cohen, thank you so much for joining us with this report from Spain, and awesome shirt, by the way. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. And all of you guys, if you want to grab one of those shirts as well, you can go to our Redacted store and pick that up if you'd like. So thanks to Dan for that. And thanks to all of you for continuing to join us here. Let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. By the way, if you do subscribe to the show, your name will pop up here on the big screen. So I think it still works, right? If you become a Redacted Rebel VIP, your name will pop up there. So you can always subscribe to the channel. And we have like 30,000 or 25,000 of you watching live right now. If you can smash that like button on YouTube and on Rumble and on Twitter and all the places that we are right now, it really helps to push us further out into the algorithm. So thank you guys so much for that. Yes, we have one more big story we want to get to on Trudeau's Canada. And basically who they're targeting now with this massive $100 million war chest. You're not going to believe who they're going after. We'll get to that story. But first, we do have our Redacted store.
Yes, you had just said, because that shirt that Dan Cohen was wearing could be yours as well. If you go to redactedstore.com, you'll find all kinds of things that we've kind of conceptualized for you. Redacted mugs, redacted hats, things like that. So you can show your support for independent journalism and show other people where you get your news, what kind of things you like to read. And also, it's just kind of a, I think people understand, well, redacted, that must be information I'm not allowed to see. I want to see that, right? It's a conversation starter. That's right. So, if you get this shirt and you wear it in the wild, or you see somebody else in the wild with their permission, we love to see images of you wearing it, using your mugs at home. So yeah, check it out. It's redactedstore.com, and you can find out all the ways that you can support us here at Redacted. One more time, you can find it at redactedstore.com.
Well, Justin Trudeau in Canada is at it once again. As part of its LGBTQ plus action plan, the Trudeau government has awarded $1.1 million as part of a purge fund that targets hateful parents opposing gender ideology and LGBTQ plus indoctrination. So if you're outspoken against it, if you're a parent who doesn't want the government involved in gender ideology, the Trudeau government now is using taxpayer dollars to go after you. This is outrageous. Journalist David Creighton helped uncover the story in Canada, and he joins us now. David, good to see you. What is this contract to Cosette Communications? This contract apparently was awarded to Cosette Communications back at the end of July, and you had to really dig to even find this information. What does this contract say? What is it asking this group to do?
Well, what it's asking this group to do, to get down to brass tacks about this, is to harass and go after parents who are really opposed to their children being exposed to gender ideology in the schools. It doesn't specifically say that, but here's how the contract reads, and it's Cosette Communications. Now, I have no idea if they're a liberal insider group. I highly suspect they might be, because that's how this government has done business traditionally. But the contract reads that they have been charged to develop, manage, an 2SLGBTQ+, I'm going to say that once, anti-stigma awareness and marketing campaign aimed at targeted segments of people. Now, it goes on to say, the campaign should address hateful propaganda and debunk disinformation that is allegedly, or as they say, targeting LGBTQ people. Now, these targeted segments of people, that can be just about anybody. But Trudeau let the cat out of the bag when he said parents opposing gender ideology in the schools, or anybody opposing Gay Pride Month, is hateful and is a captive of the far right. So that's who these hateful people are. Clearly, Trudeau is once again marginalizing, going after everyday parents who don't think their 10-year-old should be making decisions about their gender, or don't think their 10-year-olds should become captive to a school system that might have them sexually changed.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So as we go through, and you can see this, it's an anti-stigma awareness marketing campaign that they're being awarded for this $1.1 million. And this is part of a larger initiative. I mean, over $100 million scheme, right? As you write in this piece in the Post Millennial, that this was just one piece of this sort of giant kitty right now that's being devoted for this campaign, is it not?
Yeah, it's quite strange, because a year ago, August 28th, 2022, Trudeau had a news conference here in Ottawa just before he hopped off to the Gay Pride Parade in the city, the first one in 2 years because of COVID. And he announced $100 million for this LGBTQ action plan. Now, a lot of people said, well, how are you going to spend money like this? Well, clearly he's finding ways to spend money on this project, not just to find people to harass and intimidate parents or anybody who might find some objection to this whole Pride Month scheme, but he's found some really bizarre ways, and I explore this in the article. They've commissioned, it's hard to believe, but they've commissioned choral pieces of music to be written about what they call the gay purge, when homosexuals were released from the armed forces or the civil service or the RCMP because their sexual orientation in those days certainly had the tendency for blackmail, and they were released. But as part of this gay purge project, he's commissioned choral pieces to be written, and there was a huge concert in Halifax, Nova Scotia, celebrating these pieces of music. They've commissioned a monument, an LGBTQ monument for Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm not sure if they really want this in Winnipeg, Manitoba, but they're going to get it anyway. And they've also, one of the other projects mentioned on the website is to explore queer history. And so they've found a historian who's looking into how soldiers in the First World War were supposedly subject to horrible treatment. And And this is how he's finding any way to spend money. But the funny thing is, it's virtually impossible to find this information. You have to go through the Government of Canada's Pride Season webpage, which you won't find immediately because you have to go into the Women and Gender Equality Canada webpage. So you might think, well, what does women and gender equality have to do with LGBTQ Pride Season? Virtually nothing. But Trudeau's hidden this thing here, so most people are never going to find it. And we discover in other ways people who are researching, people who find a contract, people who say, hey, what is this all about? And this is how we're discovering how the money's being spent, because it's not being documented. All of the money's not being documented on this Pride Season website. And I found it astounding to learn that there really is such a thing as a Pride Season, because we've joked about this.
Right. Instead of Pride Month, it's now Pride Season.
Yeah, it was always supposed to be Pride Month in June, which, of course, is being foisted upon the school children. They have to salute the gay pride flag or else they're considered to be absolutely deplorable people and hateful. But if you look at the website, the Government of Canada has actually set aside not 1 month, but 4 months from June and beginning of June to the end of September to celebrate this gay pride. And so Trudeau often talked about Pride Season, and people would say, oh, yeah, isn't he optimistic? But he wasn't speaking out of turn. He really did privately invoke a Pride Season. It is 4 months of the year. It's even longer than a normal season. So the machinations of this Trudeau government are just incredible. And it never ceases to amaze me how they find ways to spend taxpayer money. And these poor parents are having their own taxpayer dollars used against them. I mean, this has got to be one of the worst and most malicious schemes of any government in the Western world. But this is what they're doing.
Yeah, you pay taxpayer dollars into the Trudeau government, and then they're funneling it out into a scheme to come back at you if you speak out against the indoctrination of gender ideology, or top or bottom surgeries or anything like that you don't want your children to be subjected to in school. You speak out about that, you will be targeted as part of this anti-smear campaign. Do we know the details of exactly how this Cossette Communications plans to find and, eradicate those people who speak out against this? Do we know what tools and mechanisms specifically they're using to find and identify people who are against this these gender ideology and indoctrination of children?
No. I currently don't know that, but you can bet that's going to be a follow-up story, because exactly what are they going to do to implement this communication strategy? I mean, what kind of...
It seems like misinformation or disinformation, right? It's supposed to be targeted responses, right? So I'm really curious, what rises to the threshold where this Cossette Communications would then jump into action, launch some sort of a response post or social media post, or try to, force Facebook or Twitter or somebody else to take down a post they would identify or report it as part of this campaign? It'd be really interesting to see what these mechanisms are, right?
Well, it fascinates me because, as I've said several times, as part of Trudeau's trilogy censorship bill, the online safety bill is up probably in the fall here, in September, October. And this is going to target disinformation, which the bill will not define. And I've read all of the focus groups that they've talked to, they've specifically said we're not going to define disinformation because that's going to make it harder to prosecute people.
Right.
So they have put their design out there. It's clear that they want to go after people on the basis of virtually nothing. But what really angers me about this is that why are we spending $100 million to promote LGBTQ? Because as far as I'm concerned, this is a group, even if you include all of this alphabet soup in this membership, that is not facing persecution. They have incredible tolerance in this country. They are in no danger. And in fact, if you look at most television shows, most entertainment promotes this lifestyle as something that's not just tolerable, but is actually preferable to the heterosexual lifestyle.
Right.
And if a government came out and said, we're going to spend $100 million promoting heterosexuality, we're going to tell you the best porn sites to go on, we're going to talk about Kuma Satra, we're going to tell you all of this, people would say, hey, isn't this kind of weird? Aren't we over-sexualizing the role of the government? And clearly this is over-sexualizing everything in this country.
Right. Yeah. What if they were promoting a husband and wife, or a 2-parent household? Or, I mean, it would be outrageous. It would be absolutely outrageous if we did this. I had a friend of mine recently in Canada say, I don't care what you do in the privacy of your own home. Why do we have to have parades to celebrate it and force it down our children's throats in schools? It's despicable. And again, I don't think any Canadians are really speaking out against the homosexuality and the pride portion of this. I think they're really speaking out about the indoctrination of children and what children are being forced to deal with in schools when they sign up, using pronouns or all of these things, and that sort of indoctrination, and the literature and the children's books that are now being printed and handed out to children is really deplorable. I think that's what, maybe I'm wrong, let us know in the chat, but I think that's where people are drawing the line here. And you're certainly seeing this 1 million person march about to hit Canada in September. A lot of the Muslim community that's outraged about the Trudeau government forcing this on their children. Keep your hands off our children is part of their motto. Am I wrong about that?
I don't think you're wrong at all, because it really is focused right now on the gender ideology. That has been the one plank in this whole project that Canadians have just said enough is enough on. And the 1 million person march that is being planned for September 20th across Canada, including here in Ottawa, is gaining momentum because people have just said enough. But they're also sick of the fact that these gay pride parades are becoming increasingly graphic and obscene, with men walking around literally nude and flashing their bodies at young children. Now, this should be illegal. There are laws against this on the books, but the police have said, and we've reported on this in the Post-Millennial, the police refuse to enforce the law because it's a special gay pride event. So therefore, they're exempt somehow. Exempt under which law? This is totally discretionary. The police are afraid to enforce the law when it involves this protected community. And people are sick of this too. Let people live their own lives, but stop pushing your ideology. Stop pushing your agenda, not only on children, but on the populace at large, because we all have our freedom and equality under the law, but not under a Trudeau government, which is focused entirely on identity politics, on dividing people on the basis of their gender, on their race, on their religion, on their sexuality. That's what Trudeau is all about, dividing people and trying to conquer. But it's evidently not working anymore, because he's always relied on the immigrant vote to stay in power. The Liberal Party, just like the Democratic Party, thinks if it brings in enough immigrants, it can win elections. Those immigrants are now turning against this Liberal government because they say, we didn't come to Canada for this kind of thing. We came here for freedom of speech, which we're losing. We came here to live as productive citizens and not be forced into believing sexual ideologies that are contrary to our faith. And this is what the 1 million person march is all about. Muslims have said enough. And evangelical Christians, conservative Catholics, Hindus, Sikhs, Jews are saying, yeah, I think we've had enough too. And it's time to take a stand, because we've been pushed so far. Trudeau's going to push us no farther.
Yeah. Well, the Trudeau government at it once again. David Creighton, great writing on this. And thanks for breaking this piece of the story open for us. I look forward to the follow-ups here to find out exactly the mechanisms and how they plan to go after these parents for trying to protect their children from this gender ideology that this government is pushing. David, thank you so much. Great seeing you.
Thank you, Clayton. Pleasure being here as always.
Thanks so much, David. And thanks to great independent journalists like David Creighton were able to bring you these stories. So thank you for your support here as always. Thanks to our amazing field reports that we're able to get from Patrick Lancaster and Dan Cohen and other great independent journalists who we're able to bring on here and give voice to. So thank you for supporting us. We are not funded or supported by CNN or billionaire corporations or Rupert Murdochs of the world or BlackRock or anything like that. So we are supported by you. So just either subscribing for free, or if you'd like to join our community, we have a special VIP Rebels community. If you'd like to become a Redacted Rebel VIP for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support what we do here. It's even cheaper than some of our competitors out there. So very, very cheap. If you'd like to support what we do, just go over to redacted.inc. And then just click on the community button there and become a Redacted Rebel. You get access to exclusive content, live streams, and other things that we're launching here as the fall kicks off. We're really excited about that. So you'll be able to see interviews before anyone else does, exclusive content before anyone else, or no one else will get to see it. Only you will be able to see it. So all of it is available there in our Redacted Rebels VIP community. Again, go to redacted.inc. and click on the join the community button right there. And if you're on Rumble, if you're watching us on Rumble, you can click just the red button there, the join locals button. It's very, very easy to do on Rumble. So much love to all of you guys. Thank you guys so much for supporting what we do here and seeking the truth alongside of us. We don't have the answers, but we are seeking the truth together. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll be back on Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And until then, everyone, have a great weekend.